Welcome everybody to Tales from the Jar Side, the video series. Don't feel like reading my newsletter this week? That's okay. I'll be happy to read it to you. So let's get started. The title this week is Tales from the Jar Side. Spring Boot 3.1 released, using Java preview features in the Eclipse IDE, Josh Long's Bootiful podcast, yeah, we'll get to that, a Tesla bumper sticker, and the usual assortment of tweets and toots. The subtitle this week is Termite walks into a bar and says, "Where is the bartender?" Yeah, okay, sorry. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of May 14th through 21st, 2023. This week I taught my Spring Data JPA course as a No Fluff Just Stuff virtual workshop, and I taught a private class on latest features in Java. It's basically a Java upgrade course to 17 in San Francisco, which meant I had to fly across the country and back all in 1 week. And boy, are my arms tired. Yeah, okay. That actually took a lot out of me, as it turned out, but oh well. Regular readers of, and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads, and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button on the newsletter. Let's take our weekly look at the YouTube channel. So if I look at youtube.com/@talesfromthejarside, I am up to 294 subscribers. So, hey, that's pretty good. Getting there. And my latest videos, this use Java preview features in Eclipse. We'll get to that a little bit later. Okay. So, first section. Spring Boot 3.1.0 was released. I haven't talked about it, but I've nearly finished updating my Spring and Spring Boot introductory video course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. I've had a Spring Boot course there, Spring and Spring Boot course on the platform since around 2017, 2018. And we've updated it twice, I believe. This, I think, will be the third time. Of course, this is the first time I've had to do it myself. They're going to do editing for me, but I had to do all the recordings myself. But fortunately, hey, I've got a YouTube channel. I'm used to doing this now. But it used to be I'd go into a studio and record it there. But I'm afraid the studios did not survive the pandemic, if you know what I mean. So they wound up cutting all that capability, and now I'm doing it myself. At any rate, I'm in the middle of, I'm nearly finished all the recordings. I'm in the middle of the last module is where I am. And of course, that's when the Spring team decided to release Spring Boot 3.1. It figures. So, at any rate, I guess that's better than updating it after I released the course, which is what happened with my Mockito book, Mockito Made Clear, because I knew Mockito 5 was coming. And yet they waited until about a month after the book was released to finally update it. Turned out turned out not to be a big deal, because the only things that changed in Mockito 5 is that they required Java 11 as their baseline Java support version, and the so-called inline mock maker became part of the core. So if you wanted to mock final classes or static methods or constructors, you didn't have to change anything anymore. It used to be you had to add this extra dependency or replace your dependency with Mockito-inline, and now you don't have to do that anymore. Okay, so for the Spring Boot upgrade, I read through the release notes, and I did open that. I'll open that as a link here. You can see there's the release notes themselves. And the big things that are here, there's a lot of, small things that changed, but the big ones are, and by the way, of course, Mockito 5 is now part of Spring as well. But the new stuff is the test containers support based on this service connections approach, and further down, Docker Compose. So you can now, you could already work with test containers before, but now they've really streamlined that process, and they even made it possible for you to run the test containers container, if you will, during development mode so that you don't have to only run it in the tests. You could actually run it as part of your regular Spring application.run approach. I haven't done that yet. I did do the stuff with, I did get one app running with a couple of databases that I don't have installed locally, and everything seemed to work. I did run into some minor issues I'm going to have to play with, but hey, it's not bad for the first week it's out. The test containers part, again, this is the big deal. I've been a fan of test containers for a while now, certainly over a year. I think I've worn a t-shirt for test containers on this podcast, as a matter of fact, or a screencast, however you want to say it. So it really has become the definitive way to do integration tests, not just in Spring Boot, but in pretty much anything. It allows you to run anything that can run in a Docker container locally. In fact, what I have is what they call well, here, let me show you actually. Let me open this up. This is what they call Test Containers Cloud Agent, which I am connected to. And I could open a dashboard, I could look at this, and the bottom line is that I'm actually able to run on their cloud provider, meaning I don't even need to download the individual Docker containers, which is what the Test Containers project would in principle do for you. Yeah, I'm not going to log in now. I just want to point out the logo here, the Test Containers Cloud, by the company called Atomic Jar. They've made a company specifically to fund development of this process. And that meant that when I ran, for example, a database, I used Postgres in my example. I don't even have Postgres installed locally, and I just used their cloud provider. So it streamlined that process as well. It's very nice. And it's clear that the Spring people are ramping up their usage of it. It's definitely going to be the move in the future to do integration tests. Now, the question, of course, I brought this up in the context of recording my updated course. Is this going to affect my updated course? Maybe, not a lot. The changes don't affect anything I've done. At least I haven't seen anything that bothers it yet. I would like to throw in a quick test containers demo toward the end, and I probably will. It's easy to get wrapped up in that stuff, and the course is already running long. I know you're shocked to hear that. But at any rate, I'll probably put in a demo. And I'm meeting with the team this Thursday, so I really have to have everything done by then. So we'll see. Let's move on to our next section. This week, as part of my training course in California, I had to talk about the Java latest features. And most of the features I use are released, but one of them that I happen to favor is what they call pattern matching in switch. And that's been a preview feature of Java for 4 consecutive versions. I mean, it's going to be released in Java 21, but in 17, 18, 19, and even 20, it's still a preview. Now, I mentioned here that this is a little bit of the history of the Eclipse IDE, which you can even take a look at if I Google eclipse.org. I guess I could go to .org here. And you see it's now the entire foundation that has lots of stuff in it. And if I look under projects, then eventually you can find the Eclipse IDE. Any rate, I did a search on basic Java stuff. And what I do want to show you is they have various parts associated with the IDE itself, like the Java persistence tools and JavaScript development tools, believe it or not. There's the Java development tools that are part of the IDE. There is also Eclipse Adoptium, which is their implementation of the JDK itself. I know there's a quick shortcut to go directly to, for example, the IDE itself. Here, I just clicked on the download link and that brought me to the Eclipse IDE. So it's been available there. I mean, it's still available in a big way. Now, this came out, I looked it up. Turns out it was November of 2001 was when they first released the Eclipse IDE. And up to then, we used a variety of either shareware editors or a couple of very expensive commercial tools. The most interesting one was IBM's Visual Age for Java, which had an interesting color scheme and detached windows and didn't even have a repository exactly. It encoded everything and kept it in a binary file locally. So, I mean, it was just very, very different. And some people had that. A lot of people use Borland's JBuilder. and there were a few others. I was teaching Java back in around 2000. That's when I started as a trainer, was in May of 2000. So it's been, wow, at the end of this month will be 23 years, believe it or not, since my first course. Any rate, when Eclipse came out, that kind of wiped out the whole, well, both the shareware market and most of the guts of the commercial IDE market, because Eclipse was free and it was very powerful. It had everything you needed. And it was released by IBM as part of a consortium, but it was really IBM, and this was part of their move to what they eventually called Rational Application Developer. I think that for a while they called it WebSphere Studio Application Developer, something like that, and then moved to Rational Application Developer, and the core of it was what they called Eclipse. Here's an old logo back from when it was on version 4.4, when they were still naming them after astronomical bodies. You know, they did Galileo and Io. They did moons of Jupiter. They never did Io, actually, but they did Europa and Ganymede. And they didn't want to do Io because it looked like input-output, and it looked like 10, and they didn't want that either. So they went to Galileo for that one, and then they went to Luna, and then eventually they went back to others. And I think they followed letters alphabetically all the way up to P before they gave up and just started naming it after the year. So be it. So at the time, I didn't make the connection, by the way, that there's a very obvious relationship between the word Eclipse and the word Sun, as in Sun Microsystems, which IBM denied. They said it's just complete coincidence, has nothing to do with that. Well, Sun certainly didn't think it was a complete coincidence, and I could understand that. Yeah, I don't know that I believe it either. Sun released their own IDE called NetBeans, which was pure Java all the way through, and therefore looked equally bad on every platform, to be honest with you. And it just wasn't great. But some people used it. There was a small but somewhat vocal community of NetBeans users. I haven't run into one of them in a while now. I use it occasionally. At any rate, I was an Eclipse user from when it came out, you know, late 2001, early 2002, and until about 2010, when I finally switched over to IntelliJ IDEA. And the clincher for me was that Android, which was from Google, of course, used something called the Android Developer Tools plugin for Eclipse for many years. And then one year at Google I/O, they announced, yeah, we're going to introduce this new thing called Android Studio, which was based on the same core as IntelliJ IDEA. And when they did that, they said, we're not deprecating the Eclipse plugin. But yeah, okay, within 2 years, that was a non-starter anymore. And everybody did Android Studio. And I figured if I was going to learn Android Studio anyway, I might as well learn IntelliJ IDEA. And I really liked it. It had a significant learning curve for Eclipse people. But once you got over that learning curve, it's just so much nicer. And now, of course, the market share for IntelliJ just dwarfs the size of Eclipse. Nevertheless, actually, there's a couple last things here. The Eclipse Adoptium site, in fact, if I go to adoptium.net, you'll see that the pre-built OpenJDK binary refers to something called Temurin. The Eclipse Temurin, if you will, is their code name for it. And people are like, where the heck did that name come from? And as I pointed out in the newsletter, there's two definitions of it. One is that it's an organic molecule that bears a strong resemblance to caffeine. You notice it's just got the extra oxygen molecule off to the right and the CH3 molecule down here as well. So methane, I believe that is. And I don't know what the properties are or anything. You could look it up, but it looks like caffeine, and caffeine is Java. You get the gag. The other thing, of course, is that the word Temurin is an anagram for the word runtime. So if you rearrange the letters, you see RUNTIME, believe it or not. And there it is. So silly reasons, but there it is. So when I was running my class, I had one person in class this week that was an Eclipse user, and I ran a latest features in Java course as a no fluff, just stuff virtual workshop about a week and a half ago. And again, I had one person in class who was an Eclipse user, and I had all kinds of problems getting everything to work properly in Eclipse because it made it difficult to set the Eclipse version so it understood preview features in Java. And I eventually figured out how to make it work, but it wasn't fun and it wasn't easy. So I decided to record a video about that, and that's this video, the Use Java Preview Features in Eclipse. You see, I got to have a little bit of fun making my making the thumbnail, as they say, for the video. So that was fun. And I figured, again, that, you know, how many Eclipse users are there? I don't know. And the number's gone down every year. So I don't know how many people are going to care about that. But the ones who will care a lot. So I figured it was worth it anyway. You know, so I kind of had fun doing that one. That's also, by the way, the first time I've actually kind of scripted my video. I normally don't do that. I have a few talking points and then I just kind of record it. And if I haven't figured everything out, I just throw that out and do it again. So this one saved me an extra recording, I guess, and it helped me clarify what I was going to say. You might see that t-shirt, which is a little bit hidden there. Yes, after mentioning it in last week's newsletter, there I went and ordered it, and it is Rage Against the Machine Learning. I was going to wear it today, and I thought, nah, it's all right. So I like that. I was going to get some other colors. The problem is they only had black writing against all those other colors, and it didn't look as good in all the colored ones. So I stuck with the gray here, or the beige, or whatever the heck it is. It's hard to tell from the picture. I guess it was a lighting issue. But I mentioned, keep in mind the camera adds 10 pounds, and there were at least 3 cameras on me at the time. Yes. Okay. One last thing about YouTube at this point. I got a very nice comment from somebody named Deepak Kumar pointing out how much they enjoyed my videos on O'Reilly and other ones, and I felt I wanted to include it. You can read it if you want. I'm going to leave it alone, but I really enjoyed that. That kind of made my week. So that's the end of that section, and now we'll go on to the next one. This one's entitled Josh Long and This Month in Spring. This Month in Spring is actually Josh's newsletter. He is a developer advocate for, well, the company that runs the Spring Framework, which is currently called VMware. It was originally called Spring Source, and then it became called Pivotal, I believe, and then now VMware, and I think there's Pivotal involved again, but whatever. Josh was not only a developer advocate for them, he is the developer advocate, meaning he was the first one, I believe, first one they had. And I ran into him at GIDS, at the Great International Developer Summit that I attended last month. I mentioned that in the newsletter. And he and I sat down and we did a video, a live stream on his YouTube channel, Coffee Plus Software with Josh Long. I didn't hear anything after that. I know it was recorded. He does a bunch of live streams now because he travels all over the world, and every time he goes to a conference, he's recording another live stream or 2 or 3. So the one we did 3 weeks ago is already like 15th on the list now, down the list. But last week he published his This Month in Spring newsletter. Here it is. And there's a lot of stuff in here, but one thing that was also in there was a Bootiful podcast. Yeah, Bootiful. Java champion Ken Cousin on Gradle, Java, Kotlin, Mockito, and more. This is part of the official newsletter for the Spring team. And the link here would bring you to the podcast, which it looks like I think he probably hosts on Podbean. Yeah, which is what we do on the Groovy podcast too. I didn't know that. Any rate, this has been extracted from the live stream, and he mentioned the YouTube channel. I don't know if that led to anybody subscribing or not, but it was worth bringing up in the newsletter. So there's all that information as well. So I put in the sick part because that's editorial indication that that's how it appears in the print version. That's not, that spelling error is intentional. So I added the sick part both because it's a sick pun. Yeah, wait a minute. And because it made me sick. Yeah, both of those. But I hereby now promise to never, ever use that pun again. My jokes may be bad, but I do try to stay away from anything that wince-inducing. For some reason, Josh likes that one, and he does lots of presentations that all have the word Bootiful in it. So, Okay, go figure. I mean, I have my dad jokes. He does that. It's quirky. So that takes care of that section. And then let's move on to the tweets and toots. So this is the section called Tweets and Toots for the newsletter that was dated May 7th through 14th. No, May 14th through 21st. Right. This is the 22nd today. So at any rate, the new one. One thing I want to point out, there's several creators that I sponsor on Patreon. Entirely too many, actually. Too many only in the sense that it gets pricey every month. But I prefer to sponsor a lot of creators at a low level, just enough to get acknowledged in the end notes or whatever. But that way I could sponsor as many as possible. One of the people I sponsor is Natalie Wynn, better known as ContraPoints, because that's the name of her channel. So she's got a YouTube channel there, and she is a trans person, and she discusses those issues. I have to admit, a lot of what I have learned about the life of trans people has come from two creators that I sponsored, and then it turned out I was sponsoring a third one and didn't know it until they went through a transition. So who knew, you know? I mean, it's entirely possible. I know plenty of trans people, and I just don't know that I know them, which fine. At any rate, Natalie was a really good way for me to learn. She was very educational about what the life was like and transitioning was like and everything. And that's been very helpful. There's a couple others I may mention in another newsletter. Again, I periodically mention them anyway. At any rate, she releases major long videos, but apparently she has taken recently to releasing what she calls tangents, which are somewhat smaller videos that are released just to patrons. And that's what this one is. It says, my new tangents live on Patreon, covering the AI craze, deep fake propaganda, horny ChatGPT fanfiction. She's not kidding about that. AI girlfriends, apocalypse discourse, etc. The full hour, and it was an hour long, was available to patrons. And this is an avatar that she had generated by AI to represent her and had a voice synthesizer and everything. I think she trained an AI with snippets from her own voice so that it could read the script and therefore sound like her, which was another piece of work in there. At any rate, if you get a chance to see it, it's really, really good. I don't know what her plans are to release it to the broader population, to everybody, but boy, was that very, very informative. She's an extremely bright person. She minimizes that, but she's very, very clever and a lot of insight there. At any rate, just wanted to mention it. I linked this to the tweet, so if I click on that, you see it goes to Twitter here. And if I click on that... Hello, Internet, it's me. Oh, it looks like she's got a 2-minute snippet. That's what happens there. And the link goes to Patreon, which is over here. And of course, I'm one of her patrons, so I could actually watch it. But at any rate, I do recommend it. All right, next one. Elon, yet again. I'm tired of including anything about Elon in the newsletter. I'm tired of talking about him. I mean, it's just, but every time I think there's a bottom, he lowers it. He's basically just awful. He's just a vile human being. And I had no idea until he bought Twitter what a disgusting individual he was. I had no clue. I actually thought he was intelligent. And it's like they say, what's the tweet? Didn't include it here, but somebody basically said, when he built electric cars, I didn't know anything about electric cars, so I thought he was smart. And when he built rockets, I didn't know anything about rockets, so I thought he was smart. But now he does something IT related, and I know IT, and now I don't trust his cars or his rockets anymore, Yeah, I mean, I used to think he was clever or a good manager or whatever, and he's a complete moron. And vile, is a racist, horrible person and a real malignant narcissist. I'm just shocked. At any rate, he went on this massive anti-Semitic hissy fit this week because supposedly George Soros sold all his Tesla stock. And hey, that offended him, so Elon went nuts. John Scalzi's a great science fiction author and also very good on Twitter. And he said, I mean, if your reaction to someone selling your stock is to go on a multi-tweet anti-Semitic rant, you make a compelling case for people to sell your stock. Yes. And I'm not going to go into any more detail, but I thought I'd point it out. And what I decided I want to do is I went into Canva and I designed a bumper sticker because I drive a Tesla and I'm kind of embarrassed to drive it around. I don't want people to think I'm supporting Elon. So I came up with this idea. Elon Musk is slime. I just like the car. That's the only reason. I don't think I'll actually get it turned into a bumper sticker, but I thought about it. It was another chance to play with Canva. So much for that. Okay, moving on. Favorite tech innovation. This poll made the rounds. It was pretty clever. It said, what's your favorite tech innovation? Illegal cab company, illegal hotel chain, fake money for criminals, or plagiarism machine? And clearly what they're implying, the illegal cab company's got to be Uber, although I guess Lyft as well. Illegal hotel chain's got to be Airbnb. Fake money for criminals is crypto in general, but probably Bitcoin in specific. And the plagiarism machine is either ChatGPT or Midjourney, DALL-E, one of the image generators, any of those. And I think I voted for, what did I vote for? I think plagiarism machine, but fake money for criminals apparently was winning at the time of this, when I made the snapshot of this poll. So at any rate, I thought it was very clever. I have never stayed in an Airbnb, by the way. I kind of like hotels. I'm okay with that. And I do spend money on Uber rides, not that often, but occasionally. I never rent a car anymore. When I'm traveling, I use an Uber. And I certainly don't have any Bitcoin. I threatened for a while to buy 1 Bitcoin years ago just to have it, but I never did. And now I'm kind of glad. But I'm using ChatGPT more than I care to admit, so we'll see how that goes. Moving on, speaking of AI tools, this was a great tweet. Can we please stop calling it AI and refer to Super Parrot going forward? As in, we have put the world in danger with our Super Parrot, admits ChatGPT creator. Thanks, AI, Super Parrot. Yeah, okay, that works for me. I'm going to call it Super Parrot if I can remember. Next, about maple trees. Somebody said, is maple the only kind of tree that has delicious blood, or are we missing out on other ones? I'm like, ew. No, but I guess yes. I don't know where to go with that, but I thought it was funny. This one I entitled, Apparently He Can't. The image has a vampire saying, can I come in? And a young maiden saying, I don't know, can you? And the caption says, cursing quietly, the vampire backed away, foiled yet again by the English teacher's pedantry. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, I'm the pedantic one. It's bothering me that everything there is in lowercase, including the letter I, and that they didn't use a capital letter for the sentence, and there's no, the punctuation is a little off. Yeah, okay, I'm a pedant too, I guess, but at any rate, I still thought it was a funny remark. Very clever. And finally, this timely advice from Esther Schindler, who I follow on Mastodon. She said, this is a reminder that April is Procrastination Awareness Month. This being toward the end of May, yeah, I'll get right on that. Yep, thank you. So have a great week, everybody. Last week, in addition to publishing this extended video, which I like to do, I then took each section and published it separately every day. Now, last week's newsletter had like 5 different sections in it, so I had a different post day by day. Each post was about 3 to 7 minutes long each, something like that. This one doesn't have as many sections, but I plan to do the same thing. Let's see. Last week I taught the Spring Data course and the Java Upgrade course. This week I don't have any classes, but I have a lot of meetings and I'll be doing recordings all week. So look for more videos and other tweets. And also, by the way, I should mention I am having my very first Tales from the Jar Side live stream. Let me show you that I've announced the live stream. I'm going to actually be talking to Greg Turnquist, who is the Spring Data JPA lead and the author of a series of books called Hacking with Spring Boot that he keeps updating. There's one that's reactive. There's one on 2.3. There's one on 2.4. Presumably there'll be a 3.x coming. I'll ask him on the live stream. The live stream is going to be broadcast both here on LinkedIn as well as here on YouTube as well. You can get notified of when it's coming. I will try to add those links to the notes on this video as well. So that's everything, and I will see you all again next week. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.